So, hi, Annette, nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Annette, you are a founder or the founder of Co-Creating Europe. You're also a Sufi practitioner in a particular lineage, whose name I'm sorry I can't pronounce very well, so I'm not going to try. So, rather than me try to introduce you, please introduce yourself. Anything you want to say about yourself?
Yes. So I'm a lady. I'm a mother, a grandmother. I'm an economist, and in the middle of it, or all around of it, I am. And this I am is a result, if you can say so, from going a Sufi path with my teacher, Irina Tweedy. She was living in London beside for many, many years. I was 17 years with her and trained by her. And it's the Naqshbandiya Mujaddidiya Sufi line. And finally, she authorized me to continue this Sufi path, a path of love, I would call it, because it is a very universal way of looking at the world. It's in the essence, what Mrs. Tweedy taught me is really, and what I practice today, a universal spirituality coming from this Sufi root, or from the root of love. So, yeah, and since 1991, I teach. I have seminars, retreats all over, and I have also always included my body in the sense of being a Tai Chi teacher and Qigong teacher and bringing that together. So it is movement as meditation, Tai Chi Qigong, and meditation as such. And beside that, I had always to earn my living somehow. I have children. I had to bring up or bring everything together. And at the same time, as I said, teaching since a long time, which is a big joy for me because I learn a lot. I'm also a beginner. I learn always new again. And I have developed, how do I say, different ways of teaching, which in a very practical way, how a human being is living today in a family or in partnership, having children, having to earn money. How can we do all that, integrate it, and in the core still have this process of getting to know yourself in the depth of our being? How is that possible? That was always very, very interesting for me to find out. And as an economist, I always had, and I traveled a lot. I was working in the third world in many projects. And I am also, in a way, a lover of the world. I love this Mother Earth and all the culture and all what is going on, even if it is now very destructive in many ways, but I have a love for what is taking place. And I'm trying to, in a way, integrating the evolutionary perspective through Sri Aurobindo and Mother, Auroville, Teilhard de Chardin, Jean Gebser. I see where we could go, where when I say matter and spirit are not two, how in this consciousness we can co-create a world that is more peaceful. That is now gently said. I have much bigger visions about that, but probably it will take time.
Okay, so we're making this video for Co-Creating Europe, and the themes of the video are awakening, a call to action, and a vision. And it sounds like you've had all three in your life. And it also sounds like you have a vision. Yeah, you have quite a strong vision for the future. Many people I've spoken to are in the awakening phase or in the call to action phase, and they may have a vision, but it sounds to me like you've developed over your time quite a strong idea of what can potentially come to the human race. So maybe we can touch upon that to begin with. You talk about peace. You've worked in economics and you've had a spiritual training. You've also been a mother, a grandmother as well, and a daughter. So you've integrated the practical side of life with the spiritual side of life, which is pretty unique. What have you learned from that, and how does that feed into this vision that you have for the future?
Well, you see, I always think you have to be the change you want to have in the world happen. So it always starts with me, not without there. And of course, being present, you experience the world in yourself. You experience, and experience is not the right word, but you have the frequencies even of a cosmic perspective in yourself. It's not out there. There is no inside and outside. So whatever happens in the world happens within you. I can zoom in a way like to Africa and see the people dying from hunger, or the people being very creative in their own way, building communities we have forgotten about it, or how they deal with nature. It's all within you. So when you are open enough, and it's not, how do I say? You have just compassion for what is happening. And then being still, more listening in a way inside. Not so much thinking first. It's more listening inside, because my experience is that we human beings have all the knowledge in ourselves. It's not through the brain so much. It's not so much through thinking. This is very, very important, thinking and all this, what we have accumulated as knowledge nowadays. But where we stand in our world, this alone will not be able to make the transition I see in my inner vision where we could go. It needs the heart as well. So the inner knowledge gives you an impulse, what your next action is, what you have to do. And if you are able to just follow that inner light, love in action, I would call it, then also there is no power game. I'm the doer, I'm the great being, I move all these things. It is spontaneous, natural, bringing in your evolutionary self in the context of all human beings living their evolutionary self. Finally, that's a matter of consciousness, so that we are in a way synchronized as humanity, finally, to be able to co-create a world we dream of in our heart.
It's a very beautiful statement, but also one that some might find quite difficult to understand if they haven't yet traveled to that space in their heart. So what you're talking about is a very experiential. I can feel it. I think I may have experienced some of the things that you're talking about, but for somebody who hasn't been in an experiential place, how would you almost try to transmit to them a sense of what it means in a practical level? So, for example, on an everyday basis, what can somebody do firstly to open up the opportunity to get to this place? And secondly, what will then be happening in their lives? Maybe somebody who works for a living, or somebody who's a mother or a father.
You see, I think what is very interesting also in the religious concepts in the Western culture, we talk about the conscience, which means an inner knowing. What is the right thing to do, which benefits the whole, and what goes against it. Everybody has this instance in itself. And we can ask, we just have to ask, is that a good step in the right direction? And if you listen to it, there is a yes, or maybe, or wait, or, everything is actually in us. It's not complicated. Even the religions, they talk about that, but there is a conditioned, conscious, I don't know the English word, conscience. What it means in French to know together. How do you say it in English? Conscience. Inner knowledge, we all have.
So you can say that anyone can tap into their inner knowledge. Anybody can go into themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. First of all, it's open. We just have to stop, sit for a moment, ask the question, or sit at a tree, or go in the nature, whatever serves you to slow down, to be in the moment, in presence. So, and then I think, a lot is common sense. I mean, everybody knows nowadays that we need 5 planets to cover, what we take out in a sustainable way. We know that we have, every second we put into the sea 209 kilograms of plastic. I mean, we all know these facts. I mean, we can, logically count 1 to 1 and then just see what is in a common sense, not harming, the world, the neighbors, in a broader spectrum, the family. I mean, it's a matter how you treat yourself. It's a matter how you treat in partnership your children. It's very simple. It's not complicated, and it is very complex at the same time. It's both.
Some of the people watching this have been on your path, and there'll be a few people who are watching this who may have come to this because of the current pandemic, who may be looking for something new, but the world that they've come from has been fast, not slow, has been a world of distraction, perhaps a world where they haven't had an inner knowledge or inner knowing because they haven't had a chance to go into that space. And so what would be the very first baby step for somebody who's coming from the outside world, who wants to know more, who wants to get to that love and action or that inner knowing? What's the first baby step that they can do to kind of enter into that space?
They have to open, to be willing to go into that space. It's not a matter to force or so, because first of all, we don't see it in the media, but there are many, 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 many people who already are somehow in that bigger flow of change. I mean, there are so many groups, so many communities, so many single people all over the world. And if you are not happy with yourself, maybe you see somebody who inspires you, then you just go and ask, what are you doing? Why are you inspired? And then you learn. But it needs, in a way, an openness. Most of it happens through attraction. It doesn't have to happen through suffering. You understand? And of course, sometimes there is like a trigger. So, for example, somebody dies, your grandmother dies, you liked her very much. And suddenly you have questions. What is life? What is death? And you start to ask questions. And that's the beginning.
Right. So what we're kind of touching upon now is the path to awakening. It's a
Yeah.
moment or a point where you start to ask questions, you start to look into yourself, ask
Yes.
these questions, and there's something opens up, and suddenly
Right.
you begin to perceive something new. Can you
Yes.
talk about this awakening process? Firstly, just generally, but also from your own journey. Was there a moment, or was there a number of years where you went through this process yourself?
Oh, Samir, it was a long process, but in my case, because I started actually with 14 years already, to ask these questions. And, first I wanted to become a nun, and then I found out, no, I don't have the vocation because I fell in love with somebody just 1 second, nothing happened, and then I realized, no, it's not the path. Oh, it was such a long journey in a way to just ask, what is reality? What is life? Why? For example, as I was 20 years old, I traveled alone as a woman in Latin America. I tell you, that was, and I didn't speak Spanish or Portuguese or so. I mean, it was a disaster in one way, to be so exposed, and I had no money. As a young lady, I was a gringo, of course, but I learned, and yeah, I saw there in Guatemala how the indigenous people, how they were treated. I couldn't understand the world coming from Switzerland, where, there's so much peace on the outside, but that's also very valuable. We had no two world wars. That's very exceptional. Then coming in that country, seeing how they kill each other, I was shocked. So I had to ask questions. Why do people does to each other? Why? And you cannot find the real answer on a political level only. You have to ask more and go deeper and deeper and deeper till you find maybe an answer. And I started outside, but finally I landed with myself to ask this question. And also I didn't understand World War II with Jewish people, what happened to them with Holocaust. I couldn't understand. But then, you discover, and we do on our Sufi path, spiritual dream work, for example. And then you discover you have also the one in you that is able to kill. You have also the one in you, that is doing horrible things and great things. So allowing, in a way, to all these aspects, to integrate them, to embrace them, to understand why human beings are able to do that, is really deep peace work. So I did, beside training, meditation, to focus your mind, to be completely relaxed and at the same time one-pointed, and do the shadow work and have understanding. That my teacher was excellent, Mrs. Tweedy. For example, she said, when you are disturbed, insecure, angry, or whatever in reaction of something outside or inside, it's your problem, look at it. So, it's a lot of inner work also I had to do. Now it's faster. We are faster because we are more people. So the level of consciousness of the total humanity is going up. So it's much easier. You see that Eckhart Tolle, and Byron Katie coming in, they have no religious background in that sense, it just happens to them or to you, you understand? Yeah. That has something to do that the level is changing, the consciousness level is changing of the collective, and it's easier nowadays. But I had a long day, I had a long walk, to be honest, and I know what is the dark night of the soul, I have gone through all that. And and then one day, it was not spectacular. It was in India. I just had the experience of nothingness. And at the same time, of everything. I was the dog, and in the dog, I was, these little animals, Zack in them. And it's grace. And then after that moment, there is a big process of integrating, also to change your lifestyle in a way. Also, for me, it was, I was taught in a traditional way, in a very good traditional way, but there were also limitations in it. Because the body, matter was not so really estimated. The transcendental aspect was a little bit stronger, more strongly evaluated than the immanent aspect, which has a lot to do with the feminine and the masculine principle as such, also within spirituality. And I tried just to go with my heart, and I still do that, and I'm still learning.
So it sounds to me like your awakening process was the journey of discovery, self-discovery, openness, travel, risk-taking. But then there was also a moment where you slipped into nothingness, and that's also a moment of awakening.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about that? So what happened around that day or around that moment? What did you experience? Did you require someone to lead you there? Did you get there on your own? And the day or two after, how did you begin to integrate these experiences of nothingness into your everyday life?
Well, as I said, because I was for many years on a spiritual path practicing. And it is also in a way the neti principle. I'm not this, I'm not that. You understand? But there is a special moment in India, but as I said, it was not what I heard from you, a big bang. Because you see, each human being has in a way, a unique way of being awakened. And at the same time, it's always the same. It's how can you explain, nothingness? How can you explain? You just see that what we experience through the five senses is not real. And it is real. It is both. It depends on which perspective you look at it. You understand? Mm. It's all a play, a dance in nothingness. What we perceive with our senses is a dance of frequencies. It's beautiful in itself. And then, you understand that is the integration for me takes a long time. It's still going on. It's not finished. I like to be a beginner. You understand? Yeah. Because it makes you discover in a way, you're open for discoveries, and life is permanent new discovery of the play of light and darkness, hold beyond light and darkness in the light of the light.
So you've taken these experiences, these many experiences, and you've begun to fashion your own path that you're sharing with other people. Could you talk a little bit about that? I'm now moving into the idea that you may have got a call to action. You had a calling to do something on this journey.
Well, I always had that. I was always, in a way, there is a part that is, I would call myself maybe a contemporary mystic. And a part in you is always born like that also. Because I was always engaged in humanity. I just loved always humanity. Maybe not so clear and not so conditionless. Then, you know, I had to do a lot of, self-cleaning also, shadow work, to get out my conditioning that I brought in with my families and society and all that, and my personal one. So, and being engaged in the third world very early, already, you know, starting to do my spiritual practice, but I was always interested in the whole world, not only one culture. You understand? Not only Switzerland. Switzerland was much too narrow for me. I needed more breath, and I enjoyed different, as I said before, cultures, meanings, concepts, way of living. I was curious always, you know, like a child in a good sense. And for me also, a way of living has to do with action. You know, it's the way what you think, how your words are, how you use your words, how you live your life with actions. It's not separate. We define spiritual life as a way of living, not a way of sitting or meditation. It's a way of living. That is the important part.
I'm wondering whether to talk about your practice that you brought out to the world, the golden thread. Mm-hmm. Is this something that came out of your experiences? Was this a manifestation of your experiences of awakening, your journey, or a synthesis of what you went through?
Yeah, I would call it like that. You know, it was, I think now we do it since 10 years. And the more the global aspect came into our world. When I was born, it was not like that. You know, you still had places in the world nobody from outside had ever seen. That's very different nowadays. So when it became more global, and you had also the pictures, which is also not so, you know, long ago, from the whole world, you know, from space shuttles, you know. So when I saw the interwovenness more and more on different levels on Earth, and what we are doing, and how we harm also our Earth, Mother Earth. So this somehow, you know, I get more intuitively things, and I just take it and practice it, put it into the world. Whatever comes, and I think, that's a good thing, I just do. Very simple. So that's how the Golden Thread meditation started.
Is there anything you can talk about the practice of the Golden Thread meditation, or the belief or system?
Yes, it's very easy, you know. You just sit for a moment with you here now, and then calming down in the sense that you just look at your breath, and then you visualize in front of you Mother Earth. And you have this beautiful picture, Mother Earth. We all love her, seeing her like that, seeing her fragility and her beauty. And then you just let from your heart 3 minutes. I say always, it's like consciousness light, like a sun. You just see Mother Earth in this consciousness light of love for 3 minutes. And that's it.
It's beautiful. And that's a daily practice.
That's a daily practice, only 3 minutes.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about your Sufi path. So first of all, for people who don't know much about Sufism or the practice, what are the basic ideas of Sufism? I know there are many different schools, and you're part of one particular school, but what's the basic idea?
Yeah. The basic of the Naqshbandiya Mujahidiyya Sufi line, as Mrs. Tweedy taught me, is you meditate a half an hour a day. And in this half an hour, it is more or less just dropping into love, the feeling of love, and sinking it into it. And if there is a thought coming, you just let this thought drop into the feeling of love, because feeling is much nearer to the essence of love than anything else. And the love is, in a way, alpha and omega to the door of the source. It's the first coming out, the last going in, where there is no feeling anymore. It's beyond anything describable. So that is our practice. It is a consciousness emptying practice. You let yourself go. Beside that, we had a practice of 23.5 hours a day where we said a mantra. And doing that, zikr it is called, or mantra, because we come from India, from the Sufi line from India. That's why I also have mantra expression. And you can do that, cooking and being with the children or working and so, and it helps you to bring your mind to the one-pointedness. At the same time, the mantra has an electromagnetic force in itself, because it is something very specific. The words that are used are what it is said. Normally, a word, like for example, tree, a tree, doesn't represent the essence of a tree. But in the mantra, you have a special word that is what you say. So it has a special force in it to help you to be in the moment. And with the time, when you do that a long time, it just falls off. And then you are just able to be here, now, present in simplicity. Beside that, we do this, what I said before, spiritual dream work, because there everything is mirrored in your, from your inner alchemy. You can read, you can learn about your inner alchemy, who you are, the strength and the weaknesses and the conditions and the archetypes. And it's a possibility to get to know yourself more deeply and integrate. What you do with that is very interesting, because you see every person you dream of in your dream, is a part in you or is in resonance. So if you dream of Jesus, or if you dream of, I don't know where, Gaddafi or somebody, you have to go into that and discover that it is part of you too. And when you then, for example, I had a difficulty with alcoholic persons, men that were drunk, or, I just didn't like it. But when I dreamt also of an alcoholic man in the dream, I faced him, and I understood the essence of being an alcoholic, why a person does it and what it happens. And then when you have looked at it and you are not afraid anymore, alcoholic, one has not to be so much afraid, but there are other aspects we all are afraid of. When you meet that and face that and integrate that, now I can look on the street on a man that is alcoholic. I don't have to turn off, you understand, and go into separation. I can look at it. And maybe I have to take an action. Maybe not. It depends. That's the learning, you understand? Yeah.
So these practices that you mentioned sound like they help you drop into your heart, but also they kind of unify you with the world outside of yourself, unify yourself inside, which to me is one of the kind of journeys of spirituality, is the idea of oneness or coming together or unification.
Yes.
So you found a path that trained you to almost work in a non-dual way.
Yes.
Now, how did you know that this was a path for you? Because you were somebody who had gone around the world, who'd come across different teachers and different systems. There must have been something about this particular system when you first encountered it that captured you.
Well, first of all, there were two things. You know, I was at one time the president of the how is it called? The humanistic movement that, you know, Stan Grof was in. Yeah. There was an international big movement, and I was the president in Switzerland for that. And I could invite many teachers. So, you know, I had lamas, I had shamans, I could invite, and I could observe them. Not only when they stayed on the stage, but also at night, you know. And I tell you, I was in many ways sometimes really disillusioned because it didn't cover what I felt inside, what a real teacher, how a way of living, an integrated way of living should be. And Mrs. Tweedy, it was in, I think, 82, I got her book. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. That's such a radical book. I want to see her. So, you know, I wrote to her and invited her to come to Switzerland, and she came, she accepted. And she was one that was living what she was saying. And I tell you, that's not so often. And then I observed her because I was in Tibetan Buddhism already practicing for 2-3 years already. And I observed her. I just observed her because I didn't understand. I didn't understand. She always pulled off the carpet under my feet. You understand? No way of holding or understanding it. So, and then, you know, the final thing is that the absolute and the relative is a love affair. That got me. I like that. You know, that when we have a deeper understanding, it's the lover and the beloved, you know, and when you hear Rumi and when you hear Lalaji, I think this is what really got me. The love affair. You know, even the universe I see, or the world on a certain perspective, I can see that it is a love affair. Even though we have a very difficult time now. But in the innermost being, in the essence, it is a love affair. And also to understand this meeting point where love, the lover, and the beloved one become one. Wow, it's just, it was for my heart, you know, the resonance in my heart.
Just from what you're saying, it sounds to me like you began to understand that the systems that have polarized positions can be perceived as rather than at conflict, but in love with each other. Yeah. Is that correct?
Well, it's one aspect. It's actually much bigger.
Okay.
They are not only in conflict, you know, there on a certain level, there is no conflict.
Right. Right.
Do you understand? And of course, in our three-dimensional reality, there is many conflicts, no doubt, because it's subject-object, it's separation.
Mm.
And then you have the polarities and the dual system, and they have friction together. And there are also frictions that can be creative to get to a new development, a new discovery.
Can I draw out that concept a little bit further and talk about the pandemic? Because one of the feelings I have about our current situation is that perhaps we're not at war with this virus, but the virus and humans are working synergistically. We just don't realize that. So we perceive our situation as a war or a separation, but there might be something more or less at conflict and more at oneness. How would you see that?
You see, I have always a multi-perspective, and I can see very clearly, like many people do in our world, that this virus comes from China, and it has sprung from animal to the human being, and we don't have any defense yet, so it works. And I had a first interesting diving into what is a virus to understand. You know, we have a lot of viruses, and it's probably not the last one, you know, that will happen like that. And it has also to do with the human being, you know, being 8 billion of people, having less wildlife pockets, going always more narrow together, you know, and there are many aspects, a complex system that made it possible that this virus just spread. And also, of course, the globalization and many things, you know, traveling and that. So that is one thing. When I go in a deeper level to understand is that I see that humanity has reached in his development a certain frequency of consciousness that has been for a long time now destructive for our earth, beside all the valuable things that has, you know, brought to the world. But it has reached a level where you cannot continue like that. And everybody knows that. We have Friday the Future, you know, movement and all that. The younger people, they know more about that. And then there are the old systems that they continue in the same way because it's difficult to get out of your habits, not only as an individual, also as collective. So I see that out of that interacting as humanity, you create in a special field a certain, how do I say, vibration. And this vibration, as nothing is separated, somehow reacts. Now it has created somehow this virus. It's not that somebody is only responsible for it, you know, or that it is a penance, you know, for I don't know what. No. And now this reaction makes us again react. So you have interaction. And so I see this special time we are living in a way also as a wake-up call to understand on a deeper consciousness level what a single person, or we as a community, or we as a nation, or we as a world community, what we create. and to learn from it and adjust. So that's at the moment what I see, and it's interesting that the political systems have all reacted in a very similar way, and that it was all of a sudden possible to stop everything. Very interesting. For climate change, it was not possible. And also, it's not rational because we know that 24,000 people die out of hunger every day. And we know that. And we didn't react like that. But now with the virus, it happens. It's very interesting. And so all these other aspects come also into the light. I think it is a special time now, also in the world, that everything, if dark or, how do I say, dark or more, in a sense, helping for the good of all will become visible. The tricks and the false news and, everything will now be visible, and it is helpful for us to make a choice. It's a time to make a new choice. How we want to live together. How we want to co-create together a world in peace. But there is even further stages we can dream of.
That reminds me of something you said earlier on about people who might want to look inside of themselves, just to take a pause and to take a step back. And maybe this is an opportunity for that to happen. Maybe this pause we're having in our system is giving people the time they need to actually stop. And this is the moment where they can go inside of themselves. They can ask those questions.
Yeah, that's very interesting because everything is slowed down. Yeah. We have to stay at home. Well, suddenly you have more time. For many people, some have home office and it's more complicated with children and everything. But a lot of people have time and don't have to run around. And you start to reflect. Why should I always run around? Where do I feel at home with myself? And you discover nature again. And if it's only a tree or a bird song in front of your window, you start to hear it, you start to see it, and you start to have another look into life itself, the beauty of the moment, and how it grows, how the leaves change, when they open their leaves and then they get green, or all this, it's actually a world of wonder if you look more deeply. And I think many people discover that, yes, and they have questions. And some of us are forced to live a more simple life. Unfortunately, the justice is not yet adjusted, They are the privileged one and they are the poor one. And the most poor one, they suffer most of this pandemic, but we have maybe to think also about that, how we can improve as humanity.
So what advice would you give to somebody who is finding this particular situation difficult or challenging, either because they lost their job or because they're stuck at home or for whatever reason? Is there any just practical advice you could give people on a day-to-day level?
Well, I don't like to generalize like that because I can only say something if I really have somebody in front of me, because we are also unique. Each person is unique. And at the same time, we are all the same. But it goes into the direction of more simplicity in living. I think you can also start to open more, to ask for example, Mother Earth, what she needs. You can really go with your partner or lady partner, man partner, and look into their eyes, having time together, feel together, get new relations, to change from quantity more to quality, maybe. That, I think, is an interesting aspect. And also to know finally, in a very deep sense, we have the possibility to create our lives. We have the possibility to co-create our lives. When you go very deep, you understand that we have the chance to change our lives. Giving you this empowerment, you can change your life.
Sounds like one of your big messages to people is that everything we need is inside ourselves. All the opportunities we need to change are in us. We just need the moments and the time to get into that space and discover it for ourselves. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, it is correct, but we have also to understand that now it is only that in community or in a we field, we can really manage to make the big change. Like political system, economical system. In my view, they all have to change. Education system, culture, everything. And that is something you can only achieve when people stand up, being free, using their free will, having responsibility for everything that is, the joy, the choice out of themselves to stand. No, I stand up. We stand up. We don't go to war anymore. Why should we? I think the change I am visioning, very practical in reality, will only come through people coming together, forming circles or communities, standing up and say, we envision the world like this and this, and in this direction we go. It's not from the politicians, it is not from the financial systems. I don't see it like that. It's we people. That's why, the Caravan of Unity is important, that all these initiatives that are already taking place become visible so that many people see, these are new possibilities. And that's actually what I see with this Caravan of Unity.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Could you give a bit of background to the Caravan of Unity? What is it? And maybe also your involvement in it, and what you hope it will achieve.
You see, when we started with Co-Creating Europe, was one of the things, we developed the essentials, first of all, in Co-Creating Europe, like pillars to give a direction. It's evolutionary and integral. It's in solidarity locally. It's deep ecology. It's dialogical. It's freedom and human rights we stand for. It's transsecular. It's an universal spirituality in prior unity. So this is the frame for Co-Creating Europe. And when we started that, we also thought one day we would like to bring all these different initiatives that already exist in Europe in differences, but looking in the same direction, to bring together, to experience and exchange and become visible by the media, so that mainstream gets, in a way, gets inspired and attracted. And with that, starting to move, instead of always having the old information in the same way. That was the idea. Now came the Caravan of Unity, which was an idea also by Ben Bowler, who started to do this in his way, and Anna-Marie one of our people, Doman, another one, came in contact with them last year in Colorado, and they said Caravan of Unity, Then we said, oh, well, Europe, they were dreaming that Europe too would be involved, maybe 21 or 22. And Anna-Marie and Doman said, no, we can do it right now. So we started to link up. So the main idea is really that all these different ways of spiritual action in love, being tuned in with Mother Earth, with humanity, with spirituality, with the cosmos maybe also, but also with the source in a way, really, and estimating the human being, the animals, the plants, wherever this takes place, celebrate it, do this and that, and coming together. Starting with Rumi, the idea is actually to start at the grave of Rumi, which is really a special place. So, and what I do in it is I have a little project myself. This is called One Tree Planting Peace. And we are inviting everybody who wants. You can be a single person, you can be a family, you can be a community, you can be in a big city, planting a tree with some people together, but not only planting a tree, because we have this in many ways, but do it consciously. Because the tree is in itself wisdom. It is teaching us a lot of things, also of collaboration, for example. When you go deeper a little bit into what the tree is, how it networks and all that, it's very interesting. And the tree is a big symbol because there is also the symbol of tree of life. We have the tree of knowledge, which has brought us into duality. And we have the tree of life, where we start to celebrate life. So planting a tree in this love for Mother Earth, for the tree, for the people, sitting around, being together, maybe bringing also dialogues under the tree later when the tree has grown. Caring for the trees also an aspect. That is the idea of this one tree planting peace. So we start to spread this news as soon as we have it on the internet site completed on Co-Creating Europe. That will be my contribution to that movement.
Thank you. So it sounds like the Caravan of Unity and Co-Creating Europe are institutions and actions that you and others are putting into place to help create this new system. It's a kind of your part in that.
Well, you see, when you look at Europe, when you look at the eastern part of Europe, when you look at, different countries, and when you look at the Parliament of Europe, you feel that there is a fraction taking place, and there is, I also wrote a little book called The Soul of Europe is Awakening. Europe has such a history. It's of course part of the world, but it has such a history. It has on so little space, so many different cultures, languages, ways of living. We had so many wars together. We had so many Renaissance. We had the French Revolution. We have the democratic movement. There are so many things here. Nowadays, we have good education system. We have also money in the European context. And it is a pity, in a way, when Europe falls apart again or back, has regressive tendencies. We are here in a way to make us conscious what jewel, in a way, Europe is, in a sense, like a bouquet of flower, and we could be, when we are able to have a Europe as a template in a political, financial, and all these different systems, when that is possible, maybe it could be really also an inspiration for the world community.
So Europe's possibility, its potential, its optimal potential, could be an example for the rest of the world.
Well, I would just, you see, when I'm in India, I see their template, also their gift to the world. Or when I go to Southern America, I see the indigenous people, what their gift is. You understand? I see it in the context of all, that we have really, in the depth, every culture, every nation has, in a way, a gift to share in the world community. And Europe could be, in that sense, also an inspiration.
So going forwards a few years, in a post-COVID world, what would be your ideal vision? What would be happening? How would the systems be working in an ideal perspective? Do you have a few thoughts about this?
Well, I hesitate a little bit because I just got an article where it's an article about conspirituality and conspiracy beliefs, that they are in a way, one is the dark side, one is the light side, and I don't agree so much, because you see, already the rishis 5,000 years ago talked about a coming time on our earth where heaven on earth will be realized. So for me, it is like, when I ask also people, how could a world your heart wishes, that it looks like, be? And people make drawings. People, put together, and I did that many times. I tell you, most of the people have like a blueprint in their heart or in their inner being, how a world in peace, in harmony with the cosmic harmony could look like. That is interesting, you understand? So I have just, when I was once in Kos, in Greece, I just became an inner picture of this heaven on earth. And I keep it in my heart like a blueprint. And it is not so much in detail, but it's like a perfume. I can smell the direction. We all have a longing in our heart, because finally we all would like to live, in dignity, in joy, in peace. I mean, what we have nowadays, or what we had in the Second World War, I mean, it's very barbaric. It's not a civilization, sorry. I have other ideas what a civilization is. It's really caring for everything that is alive and exists.
So I very much like your idea that everyone's got a blueprint in them. Everyone's got inside of them a particular vision of heaven on earth or unity or perfection. You've had a chance to go into yours. First of all, how does somebody access that? How would somebody get into that space where they can find their own subjective perfection, their own system? How can someone find that in themselves? Is it the same as before meditation, dropping into themselves, or is it something else?
You know, it happens in a unique way to each person, but you have, in a way, to get slower, to make a stop. If your feet always run and your mind is always, running around, you cannot catch it, even if it talks to you. Actually, this always talks to you. You have just to learn to listen or to remember who you really are. It's not a big task. It's not that it needs years and ages, It's always here now. And I would like to encourage the people not to think it is difficult, because we are in such a special time. It can come around the corner. Somebody can talk to you, or you meet somebody and it gives somehow a hit to you, and or you just make a stop and listen for a moment, ask a question, listen. It's not difficult. It is.
So if somebody gets into that space and they can sense that vision, as you put it, you could smell it, or you just have to get a feeling of it. How can they go from there to beginning to manifest in their lives? How can they draw it out?
It is a natural movement. Love, because in that vision it is infiltrated or inherently, so it's inherently full of wisdom and love. It cannot stay here. It moves by itself, because there is an intelligence in being, much higher intelligence than we in the mind. I estimate highly the mind. I love good analytics and all that. But there is something greater in a holographic way that has an incredible intelligence and love. And that's a dynamic that out of itself, if you allow it, wants to move. You have just to go with it.
People have this opportunity now to go into themselves. They have a moment of time. Is there anything you want to say about that? We talk about love and action, inner knowing, openness, dropping inside. But you're also a mother. You're also a grandmother. You're an economist. So that's one language: love and action, inner knowing, openness. Is there an equivalent in the other languages? The languages of the mother, the language of the economist, the language of just a common person.
Yeah.
What can they do?
Language is very simple to love.
Okay.
To love my little boy, to love the tree, to love. I think, and there's nothing in a way to do, because in essence we are that. And it is like a stream. It just is. And we just have to go, the little ego has just to go out of the way. That's beside normal. That's what human being means.
Can I ask you probably a difficult question to answer in any one go? but love is a very broad word. We use in English language, we use the word love in many different ways.
Oh,
And
yes.
I know when you talk about love from the Sufi perspective,
Yes.
it always feels there's an all-encompassing joy and
Yeah.
space.
Yes.
Could you describe that love in your experience and what it means?
Yes, and thank you for I know that we talk so much about love. For example, I love spaghetti. That's harmless. But then the plate of spaghetti is only about 50 centimeters. And how long does it last, this love? You see that it is time-wise and localization-wise very limited. So, and then you love your family, you love, your nation, you love your religion, you love this and that. And it grows more and more. The radius gets bigger, but the love I'm talking about has no boundary. And, I'm also only a human being in the sense I don't have always this pure frequency of love. But that's what I try to cultivate, you understand? And if I'm not, I don't punish. It's okay, But that's where I feel at home most with me. When this pure love can just flow through me. It has in one way nothing to do with me. And at the same way, it needs a container to flow through. And so, yeah, it has thousands of faces, this kind of love. It can say no. It can say yes. It's not, floppy like that or sweet only. No, it is it's for me clear like a diamond. You understand? Because it has discernment. But the love holds it all without judging. And it's an art of living. And I'm a part of it just also to learn. Each day is an opportunity to open a little bit more your love that you always have been and always will be. Consciousness and love. That's what we are.
Thank you. There's so much more I could probably ask you, but I think that's a nice place to leave it.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to say, or have we covered everything?
I thank you. It was a very deep talk, Samir, and it has to do with you.
Thank you.
It's always talking in resonance.
Yeah, so definitely. Thank you very much. I feel that too. I hope we get to speak again. Thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll see you next time.
Goodbye, Samir. All the best for you and for all of us, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.